Good morning, students. Today we will deal with the next chapter, the origin and growth of Indian political system. This chapter inculcates in us the nationalist, the patriotic feeling. This also teaches us the legacy of our Indian government. We also learn in this chapter the political developments which took place in India. Here we learn about the interim government, the first general elections. Then we also learn about how the states were integrated, how the princely states were all different, British states were different, and all the reorganization took place. How the reorganization was done, what were the problems faced by the Indian government during the integration, the first general elections, the making of the Constituent Assembly, all this is what we will be studying in this chapter. India got independence at the midnight hour on 15th August 1947. This was the time where it was a time of rejoicing because the freedom struggle was so much of a burden that everything was relieved as soon as we got independence. There was something unique in this freedom struggle of ours in India. We had to send the British out of India and we had to rule our own country. And here, this was a mass movement. Everybody, every individual in India were involved in this. Of course, few of them were leaders and others were followers. The most important principle which was being followed in this freedom struggle was the non-violent revolution. And this non-violence was Gandhiji's idea. Among many other people who possessed, few of them possessed high moral standards. They mobilized millions of people into the political action. And these people devoted their entire life for this movement. They are Dadabhai Naoroji, Gandhiji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Bhagat Singh, Lala Lajpat Rai, V.D. Savarkar, Jawaharlal Nehru, Bipin Chandra Pal, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Subhash Chandra Bose, Chandrasekhar Azad, Vallabhbhai Patel, Shivram Rajguru, Ghaffar Khan, Rajendra Prasad, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, B.R. Ambedkar, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and C. Rajgopalachari. All of them dedicated their complete life only for this freedom struggle which led to the independent India. The movement was original, innovative, and democratic. Original. This movement was something very different, incomparable with any other movements. This was innovative, it was creative because it followed the principle of non-violence. It was democratic. The people's opinion, the public opinion of the people was what mattered the most. Hence, this movement was something very democratic because the people's opinion mattered a lot. Independent India had a few ideals. These ideals were popular sovereignty, representative government, self-reliant economy, foreign policy, and civil liberties. What is popular sovereignty? This is people's government. All the people together vote for their leader. Sovereignty means internally and externally our nation is completely independent. Representative government. We have elected leaders. All these elected leaders form the government. Self-reliant economy. Our people work for achieving self-reliance after independence. Foreign policy. Foreign policy had to be made. Nehru was the person who was behind making of the foreign policy in India. And in this The principle imbibed in it was the Panchashila, where they spoke about togetherness and living in peace. Civil liberties was the next ideal of independent India. There was freedom, where everybody enjoyed rights. So all people within the independent India enjoyed rights. This country opposed fascism and imperialism, that is, rule by other nations. Now we've had a difficult times, we have passed through the difficult times, we have got our independence, now we need to retain our independence forever. And for this, we have been following these principles. Now, it opposed fascism as well as imperialism, but we also had these ideals of ours enshrined and incorporated in our constitution. The constitution was made by a constituent assembly which had the most important people, that is like the lawyers and the most of the educated cadre of people who were there in the constituent assembly who framed the constitution. And these principles of popular sovereignty, self-reliant economy, representative government, foreign policy, and rights was imbibed in our constitution. And all the policies and programs of the government, as well as the policies of the political parties, depended on all these ideals of independent India. After independence, Gandhiji said, this was a day of rejoicing because it was the end of our slavery. At the same time, this was a day of mourning because of the partition. India and Pakistan got separated. There was mass exodus. People were moving out of the borders. People were there were communal riots. There was so much of confusion that large-scale violence took place. All this was the sad part of our independence. But India had to rediscover herself. India had lots of opportunities in front of her. At the same time, it was also a field full of challenges. And India, after getting its independence, had to fulfill all the challenges which were in front of her. The joy of independence was tainted for us just because of partition. And this was the sad truth which all of us face and which problems has not been solved even till today. We have a lot of problems like agricultural and industrial stagnation, economic backwardness, impoverishment, bad health service, ignorance, inequality. Agricultural sector and the industrial sector was neglected. Nobody bothered about that. That had to be developed. Economically, we were backward because of our financial instability. India's financial conditions was very bad. Impoverishment, a long period of instability, long period of political instability has led to impoverishment, loss of wealth. At the same time, there has been situations where we had to face famine, etc. Then bad health services. It was all the people were more involved in the movement of getting independence. Nobody bothered about the health services. Hence, we had to recover. We had to come out with good solutions and improve the bad health services. Ignorance. People were ignorant. None of the people were educated. There were so much of problems which people faced. And inequality. We were not being treated equally. There was so much of inequality around, and these problems were the challenges which India had to face. So, India, after independence, made out or clearly specified it had to do certain specific tasks. One of that is territorial and administrative integration of India. Territorial integration because we had princely states and British states, which was too different. We had to integrate all of them. So territorially as well as the administration had to be integrated and work as one complete India. Framing of the Constitution and building a responsible representative democracy. Democracy means a government by the people, for the people, and of the people. And in a democracy, we elect our representatives. And these representatives whom we elect are supposed to be responsible leaders for us, because they are the ones who go to the legislature and fulfill our requirements. Hence, while framing the Constitution, the Indians, the leaders of our nation, had to be very, very clear as to what has to be imbibed into our Constitution for achieving the goal of a responsible representative democracy. So this was the biggest task which was in front of the Constitution makers. Next was pushing the process of nation building. The process of nation building had to be done. We had to develop in all fields. It is not only building of buildings, building or construction of buildings. It was the whole complete nation had to be built. It had to be done in people building. It had to take place in the administration building. It had to take place in the democracy building, etc. The British government granted recognition to the East India Company in 1600. The East India Company captured political power in 1757 under the Battle of Plassey, and it ruled till 1857. The East India Company ruled from 1757 to 1858. This regime was filled with corruption, exploitation, and discrimination. Hence, later on, it led to the Sepoy Mutiny in the year 1857, which showed that there was so much of differences, so much of unhappiness amongst the people. There was so much of discontent with this rule. So they were explaining those things. At the same time, this Sepoy Mutiny led to the transfer of power to the British Crown in 1858, and this was done on the basis of the British Crown Act of 1858. By then, there were a few changes. There was A.O. Hume, a British officer, who specified and who motivated a few people to start with the Indian National Congress in 1885. In this political party, when all the people came together with different ideas, different ideologies and aspirations, they pressurized the British government for giving independence to India. The British government responded to the Indian National Congress's pleas, and it gave certain reforms. And these reforms were incorporated by way of acts. These acts were the Morley-Minto reforms in 1909. These reforms brought in certain changes which said it gave opportunities to the Indians to take part in the government, to provide a separate electorate for the Muslims. At the same time, all the members were allowed to participate in the budget making. This was a failure, so they made another act, another reform, which was called as the Montagu-Chelmsford Reform in 1919. This introduced diarchy, the system of dual government in the British provinces. This also was a failure, which later on led to the formation of the Government of India Act 1935. Here, they gave little more provisions which provided for education facilities, which provided for reservations, which provided for provincial autonomy. But this also, there were certain drawbacks. Hence, the final Reform Act, the Indian Independence Act 1947, was formed. The formation of the Constituent Assembly was the most important principle of this. The formation of the interim government, the formation of integration of states, and the source of authority from the British Crown has to be given to the Indian government. So with these policies, we have brought in a lot of changes within our nation. Now I will give you all a few set of questions. In today's topic itself, you will get the answers for those. I would like you all to write it down, take a picture and send it to the link below. The first question is, when did India become independent? Second, when did Indian government constitution come into force? Third, when was the National Congress formed? Which act transferred power from company to the crown? Mention the provisions of the Morley-Minto reforms. Mention any one provision of the Government of India Act 1919. What is diarchy? Thank you. Have a nice day.